Okay, back for another hand. Had a good day at 100NL, so it's time to review another hand. Again, it's going to be a 3-bet pot. Button versus small blind. 3-bet pots are where the most money is, other than, I guess, like 4-bet pots. But, generally the bigger pots, the more, I guess, in theory, I'd like to study them. Just there's more equity, more money involved. And not that I'm uncomfortable in 3-bet pots, but I just want to review them to make sure I have them down pretty solidly. Especially as I begin becoming more of a cash game player. It seems important. Guy button opens, kind of recreational type stats. 33, 23, 4 isn't exactly a reggy stat line like yours truly. But it's only 75 hands. You never really know. He does open pot, which again immediately signals to me as recreational. I don't really think people are opening pot. I don't know why you would. And he's also raised 67% of the buttons and played 62% of his buttons, so he likes playing in position, right? I bet he's playing most of his suited hands on the button, and that's just how he likes to play. So I 3-bet, and I think $14 is standard here. Generally 4x out of position, especially button versus small blind is probably standard. I guess in the hand, when I saw you open pot, I was like, I don't really think he's that bet size sensitive, so I don't really know I could probably, 13 is the same as 14, and why not do the same thing for cheaper, but I think I should just go 14 here and just keep my size as standard, and maybe the $1 does matter. You never really know. Anyway, he decides to take flop. Queen 10 is probably, I guess it's definitely good for us. We have quads, we have ace queen, we have 10s. You can still have 10s, but I guess we have them more often. You might 4-bet them sometimes. We have all the overpairs like aces and kings, and he doesn't really have those. So I think I'm going to be betting here a lot of the time for a small amount. I could probably go like 1/4 here, and it would be fine with 100% of my range. And I think, this should just be $9. I don't know why I'm doing dumb sizings, but I went with a 1/3 sizing, just as, the 1/3 seems to be pretty profitable on most boards. He calls, and the turn is interesting. We turn the backdoor nut flush draw, in addition to having 10 with top kicker. It's kind of an interesting spot because if I bet and get raised, I'm never folding, but I don't think it's really doing it with worse that much often. But I guess I have seen it with like Jack 10 or 10-9. I bet and then they min raise and just for a cheap showdown or whatever. But this isn't a bad turn for us. This is a really good turn for us, but it makes it a bit weird. I'm not really sure if I'm supposed to be betting this combo exactly, or if maybe this is a checking range hand. I don't know. But I decided, against the recreational, I decided to bet. Still getting value from hands like King Jack, Jack 9, or like 8-9, Jack 10, King 10, those types of hands. Having the ace of clubs means that if he was floating with like ace high backdoor flush draw, he's now going to fold because he can't have turned a backdoor flush draw. But he decides to call, which is fine. And this is where I think I made a mistake. I think in the moment I was thinking, I don't really know. For our range, this is a good card, right? If we were barreling with ace king of clubs, ace jack of clubs, we just improved, right? If we had 8-9 of clubs, jack 9 of clubs, some club combos, we would probably bluff jam this river 100% of the time. And so I think I should be jamming here a lot. But I think in the hands, I was thinking to myself, I have no idea what worse is calling me. I chop with all their aces. If he somehow has, ace jack, that's unfortunate because we actually lose that hand. He should never really have ace king, but I've seen it done. I've seen people flat ace king in these positions to a 3-bet, which is pretty ridiculous, but beside the point. And, if he has like 8, 9 of clubs, Jack 9 of clubs. I guess I'd rather let him bet and bluff it off, but I think, you know, I've heard a bunch of people say people notoriously under bluff here, yada yada, and I think, you know, I'm getting stacked by King Jack or Queen X anyway, so I should probably just jam here and try and get heroed because people aren't bluffing enough, but I decided to check just because of how hard this card is perceived to hit our range. He checks back, and I don't, you know, PT4 isn't going to show it, but he has King 10 of spades. Fair enough. Anyway, let's open up Pio. Okay, 0.2 of the pot size is good enough. So here's my 3-betting range. I think, you know, pretty standard. Pretty much any hand I'm going to play, I will be 3-betting. I'm not going down to King 7 suited a lot. This should probably be less frequency and yada yada. But yeah, 6s most of the time, 5s, 4s, 3s, deuces. I'm probably folding these more often. And then just every other hand is just 100% frequency, and I think that's fine. His continuing range is pretty wide, obviously. He's opening pretty wide on the button. He's a recreational player. He's going to continue. He's not going to fold that often. And so I gave him pretty much most of the suited variants. You know, sometimes he'll have hands like 3-2 suited, not often, but sometimes. These like Queen 10 off, Jack 10 off, Ace 9 off. Yeah, they'll have them sometimes, not often. You know, Jacks and 10s are probably 4-betting sometimes, but not all the time. And I mean, like Ace King, I just give a courtesy 10% because I have seen people just flat these hands on the button versus small blind 3-bet. For no reason. I don't know why, but yeah, and I imagine these like suited aces are getting 4-bet at some frequency, but not that often. Anyway, let's see. So first thing is out of position equity is really good. You know, I accidentally ran this one time earlier while leaving the buttons range is like a button opening range, so they had like aces, kings, queens, jacks. And it was like about 54 or 55% equity, and so I'm not surprised to see this bumped up quite significantly. And yeah, obviously, not having these over pairs and not having these strongest queens a lot or all the time is going to hurt. And the fact that I'm 3-betting not just a polar range but a linear range means that I can have, you know, Queen 10 suited and 10s and you know, more hands than just like ace, queen, ace, king, aces, yada yada. These are about, I guess they make sense. You know, in position's always gonna have more, but that's just how it goes. Anyway, the strategy, not surprising to me to see that we bet small with most of our range. It looks like 70% of the time we're gonna bet a third. I'm kind of curious what hands we're supposed to bet big with. I guess we're gonna bet big with some of our queens. Makes sense. And then I guess just like these hands with backdoor flush draws also makes sense. I don't get why like ace king of clubs, ace king of spades is betting bigger more often than ace king of hearts. But I guess it matches the suit of the queen, and so we block. So we don't block their strongest queen X suited, like ace queen suited type stuff. I don't know. I'll have to think more about why that is, but it's pretty clearly because those are the suits of the queens. So this is not really that relevant. And so yeah, we're betting 1/3 with most of our range, and then 2/3 it with queens and like some select backdoor bluffs. But I would probably just bet 1/3 here with all of my range except for with Queen X as an exploit. So we do bet 1/3, and he does call, as King 10 suited should do 100% of the time, which makes sense to me. And the turn is the 7 of clubs. Interesting card. Yeah, it looks like we have a lot of give-ups, and all of our club is continuing. Ace 10 of clubs is actually betting bigger, about half pot, which makes sense. It just seems to be a function of equity and just having wanting to get as much money in as possible, not necessarily like getting called by worse or folding up better type deal. Um, yeah, so that makes sense. Um, yeah, I don't really see much here that's surprising. Um, Betting 1/3 with sevens is interesting. I might sevens obviously is fine, but I was thinking like sixes, fives, fours. I guess we're turning these into bluffs at this point. Not that we have them all that often, but yeah, I guess we're just turning these into bluffs. We do that, and he's continuing pretty wide here. I'm surprised to see that he's supposed to check call, like ace deuce suited on the flop. I would probably just give up. But he does call, and we see the ace of hearts, I think, on the river, which is a very weird hand, a very weird card. Yeah, it was the ace of hearts. And this is actually kind of cool to me to see that I actually am supposed to check here. That's makes me feel good. I don't know if it's for the reasons that Pio wants me to check. That's always something different. Just because I'm doing something doesn't mean that Pio is doing doesn't mean I do it for the right reasons. Broken clock is right twice a day type stuff. And this obviously makes sense that we're jamming all of our queens and our strongest ace X. And I guess we're trapping with aces because we want him to bluff. And we're going to get the max from queen X anyway. Yeah, that makes sense to me. And then, yeah, here's where things go off the rails. He's supposed to bluff here a lot. But, yeah, obviously, I'm surprised he even has sixes at this point in the hand. I would not expect that to be a thing. I would not expect eights to still continue on the turn. Maybe not even on the flop. But I guess that's fine at some point, especially when I 1/3 it. But, yeah, I mean, even some 10x is turning itself into a bluff. And I never really think an opponent is doing that, and obviously they didn't here. Yeah, so they're value jamming their queen X. They're thinly value betting their strongest aces that don't chop, so better than ace 10. I guess even their ace X of clubs. Very weird to me that this is a value bet. I can't imagine much worse. It's check calling, but let's go check. Yeah, interesting. I guess I kind of want to look at street by street equity. Who does the seven of clubs favor? I don't know. It looks like in position gains a heap of equity, right? We were 57 on the flop, and now 52. Excuse me, on the turn for my hand or my range. And I guess that's just because I have to give up so frequently. What hands does he have? I guess I have these types of hands that have 1/3 that are just going to fold out his hands, and now he's connected pretty hard here. Which is interesting. I'm surprised he has king 6 suited on the turn. Wouldn't expect that. And then this ace has to help me a lot. Not that much. I guess 2 or 3%. But yeah, obviously the equities are going to be the same. Anyway, kind of interesting. Surprised to see rivers a check from ace 10, but I guess that makes sense. Yeah, I guess this hand makes a lot of sense to me. Only thing really is betting, what hands am I betting 2/3 with on the flop here kind of stuff as a bluff as opposed to just 1/3, and I guess it's got something to do with, ace kings interacting with the queen X on the board. I don't get it, but that's the hand.